She touched my arm once, just to pass me the cup, and somehow that small, ordinary moment refused to leave me. I remember the sound of the ceramic against the wooden table, how her fingers lingered a heartbeat too long. Not long enough for anyone else to notice. But I did. Her name was Elena. She was the kind of woman who moved as if time bent to her rhythm, careful, composed, self-contained. I worked part-time at the same studio where she taught evening classes. She'd always been polite, distant even, until that night when we stayed behind to finish a project the others had already given up on. The studio lights buzzed faintly overhead. Outside, rain pressed softly against the tall windows, making the world feel smaller, quieter. I could hear the faint rhythm of her pencil on paper, the steady pattern of thought. I tried not to stare, but I kept finding my eyes on her hands, precise, confident, slightly ink-stained. "You should go home," she said without looking up. "It's getting late." "I don't mind staying." A pause. Just the sound of rain. Then she sighed, a little smile tugging at the corner of her mouth. "You never do you?" I didn't know what she meant, or maybe I did, but didn't want to answer. She finally looked at me then, really looked. Her gaze wasn't soft, it was measured, searching, like she was trying to see what I wasn't saying. I could feel something shift in the air between us, subtle, fragile, but real. Her expression wavered for just a second, and in that tiny break, she wasn't my teacher, or my senior, or the composed woman I'd built in my head. She was simply there, tired, beautiful, human. "Here," she murmured, leaning closer to adjust a line on the draft. The sleeve of her blouse brushed my wrist. A faint scent of sandalwood and rain reached me. My breath caught, but I pretended it hadn't. Our hands almost touched. Neither of us moved. For a moment, the room felt impossibly still, every sound outside fading until there was nothing but the pulse in my throat. Her fingers hovered close enough that the warmth of her skin grazed mine. Then, as if realizing it too, she drew back quickly, clearing her throat. "Sorry," she said, her voice quieter now. It's fine," I interrupted, though I wasn't sure what I was forgiving her for. Something flickered in her eyes. Not embarrassment exactly, more like a hesitation she couldn't name. She turned away, reaching for her bag, movements a little too deliberate. I wanted to say something, anything, to make the moment real before it slipped back into normal. But words felt too small for what had just happened. So instead I asked, "Do you always stay this late?" She looked over her shoulder, her tone calm again, though her eyes lingered on mine longer than they should have. "Only when I forget what time it is." Another pause. Another almost smile. I nodded, pretending not to understand that she meant more than she said. The rain had stopped now, leaving the glass streaked and silver. I gathered my things slowly, unwilling to break the silence. She stood by the door, hand on the light switch, waiting, or maybe not waiting at all. And then it happened, just as I walked past her, her hand brushed my sleeve again. Soft, deliberate this time. She didn't say a word. But her touch said everything her words couldn't. And then the studio door opened, someone else's voice cut through, calling her name. She stepped back. I froze. Whatever had almost happened vanished into that thin, echoing silence. After that night, things between us shifted, not enough for anyone else to notice, but enough that I couldn't stop thinking about it. Elena still greeted me the same way every afternoon at the studio, calm, polite, a faint nod that carried no trace of what had happened. Yet when she spoke my name, it landed differently now, as if she had to think about saying it. Some evenings, I'd catch her staring out the window instead of at her notes. Her wedding band was gone. I'd never asked why. And she never volunteered it. But sometimes, in those quiet stretches between conversation and silence, I could feel a kind of sadness in her, the kind that doesn't announce itself. It just lingers in the way someone holds a cup too long or avoids eye contact when laughter feels too close. I wasn't supposed to notice her like that. She was my senior, my mentor, and the age gap between us made the whole thing sound like something people whispered about rather than understood. But every day, it became harder to pretend that what I saw was just admiration. That week, she asked me to help organize the storage room, something small, routine. The air inside was warmer than it should have been, carrying the faint scent of dust and citrus cleaner. We worked in silence at first, side by side, our shoulders almost touching each time we reached for the same shelf. "You shouldn't take on everyone's work," she said suddenly, her tone soft but edged with something else. "You'll burn out before you even start." I smiled. "You sound like you've done that before." her hand stilled on a stack of papers. A pause. Maybe I did. There it was again, that flicker of vulnerability beneath all her composure. It made her seem both closer and further away at once. I tried to change the subject, but she turned toward me then, leaning slightly, close enough that a strand of her hair brushed my arm. I could feel the warmth of her breath when she spoke again. Why do you stay late, really? The question caught me off guard. Maybe I like the quiet, I said. Her eyes held mine, calm but searching. Or maybe you like something else about it. I didn't answer. The space between us filled with everything we weren't saying, the soft rhythm of her breathing, the faint hum of a light, the sound of my pulse loud in my ears. When I finally stepped back, she didn't move away immediately. Her hand brushed my shoulder as if by accident, though neither of us believed it was. The touch lasted less than a second, but it felt longer, deliberate, hesitant, dangerous. Then she looked down, collected the papers, and said barely above a whisper, "You should go home." I didn't. I stayed there, in that quiet room, watching her tuck a loose strand of hair behind her ear, pretending not to notice that her hands were trembling just slightly. For the first time, I realized this wasn't just about curiosity or timing. It was something neither of us had planned, and both of us were already too deep to step away from. By the third week, our routine had become a quiet pattern, unspoken, delicate, dangerous. I told myself I was just helping, that she needed another pair of hands. But the truth sat heavier than that. That evening, the studio was empty again, except for the faint echo of rain on the skylight. Elena stood near the drafting table, her hair pulled back loosely, the collar of her blouse slightly open from the heat. She was tracing something, but her focus was scattered. I could feel it, that same tension that never really left since the night she'd touched my sleeve. I moved closer to hand her a folder, and our fingers brushed. It wasn't even a touch, just the suggestion of one, enough for both of us to flinch, to catch the breath that followed. "You're distracted," I said, trying to sound casual. Her lips curved slightly, not in amusement but in restraint. "So are you." I should have stepped away, but I didn't. The distance between us felt like a lie either of us wanted to tell. Just then, the door creaked open. A coworker's voice called from the hall, light and unsuspecting. "Elena? You still in there?" She froze. We both did. The sound of footsteps came closer. Without thinking, I reached out, guiding her gently behind one of the tall shelves. The space was narrow, the air thick with the scent of paper and her perfume, faint, clean, impossible to ignore. She stood inches away, breath shallow. The door opened fully now. "Guess she left already," the voice said, then faded as the door clicked shut again. We didn't move. Her hand rested against the edge of the shelf, brushing my sleeve. I could feel her pulse, or maybe it was mine, in the air between us. "That was," she began, her voice a whisper. "Too close?" I said. She didn't answer, but her eyes lifted to mine, steady, searching. The kind of look that erased the world around it. For a heartbeat, I thought she might close the distance. My body leaned toward hers before I even realized it, caught in the pull of something neither of us could name. But she turned away first, her breath trembling. "We can't," she said quietly. "You know that." I nodded, though I didn't move. "Then why does it feel like we already have?" That broke her composure. Her jaw tensed, her gaze softened. She looked at me like she wanted to argue but couldn't find the words. I reached out, almost without permission, and tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. My fingers grazed her skin, warm, electric. She didn't step back this time. Outside, the rain grew louder, blurring everything into a soft hum. When she finally spoke, her voice was fragile, barely audible. "You should go before someone really does see." But she didn't move. Neither did I. The lights flickered overhead, and in that half-second of darkness, I could feel her hand brush against mine, not accidental this time. Just long enough to make leaving impossible, and staying unbearable. The next day, everything felt heavier, her silence, the air between us, even the light through the windows. We didn't speak much during the morning session. She avoided my eyes, and I pretended not to notice. But every time she walked past me, her scent lingered, something warm, faintly floral, and it pulled me back into the memory of that narrow space behind the shelf. By afternoon, I couldn't take the distance anymore. She was reviewing a set of sketches, her hand pressed against her temple, the other clutching a pencil that had long stopped moving. "You're upset," I said quietly. She didn't look up. "You assume too much." I stepped closer. Then tell me I'm wrong. Her gaze finally lifted, sharp, tired, beautiful. This, whatever this is, it's going too far. The words should have stopped me. They didn't. You're the one who keeps staying late. Her lips parted, a faint tremor of breath. Don't. But I did. I took another step, close enough that I could see the faint lines near her eyes, the subtle movement of her throat when she swallowed. Elena, I said softly. I'm not trying to make this harder. Her voice cracked. You already are. The silence that followed was alive, almost audible, like the moment before lightning hits. She set the pencil down and stood, facing me fully now. Do you know what people would say? She whispered. Do you have any idea what that would cost me? I nodded. Then why haven't you walked away? Something in her expression faltered. The strength she always carried gave way to something raw, almost pleading. I can't seem to, she admitted. That was it, the line neither of us could uncross. I reached for her, fingers trembling slightly as I brushed a strand of hair from her face. She didn't move. Her breath caught as my hand lingered near her cheek, tracing the outline without touching it. Her eyes closed. You shouldn't. I know. The room felt too small, the air too thin. I could hear the faint hum of the city outside, a car passing, the ticking of the clock. And beneath it all, the rhythm of her breathing, uneven, vulnerable. She stepped closer until I could feel the heat of her against my chest. My hand found her wrist, gently, not to hold her, just to feel she was real. I keep telling myself this is nothing, she whispered, her voice shaking. But then you look at me like that. Her words trailed off. I leaned in, not enough to bridge the distance, but enough for my breath to brush against her skin. She didn't pull back. Her hand rose slightly, fingers grazing the side of my neck, hesitant and desperate at once. Tell me to stop, I said. She didn't. Her lips parted, so close I could almost feel them. And then, a sharp knock at the door. We both froze. Her hand slipped away, leaving the warmth of its imprint behind. Come in, she said quickly, her voice suddenly steady again. But her eyes stayed on me, wide, breathless, as if that one word had cost her everything. The day after the near kiss, everything between us cracked open, subtly, but unmistakably. Elena avoided me at first. She arrived earlier than usual, left sooner, kept her words brief. But tension has a way of finding its way through silence. And by evening, we were the only two left again, the pattern we both pretended not to notice. She was standing by the window, her phone in hand, when I walked in. The light from the setting sun traced the edge of her face. She didn't turn around when she said, You shouldn't be here. I thought you might need help closing up. A long pause. That's not why you came. She finally turned to face me, calm on the outside, but her eyes were raw, unsettled. There's something I need to tell you, she said, her voice lower than usual. Yesterday, someone saw us. In the hall. My pulse spiked. Who? Cynthia. She hesitated. She didn't say anything, but she looked at me differently today. You know what that means. I felt the words sink between us like stones. Do you think she'll? I don't know. She interrupted. But it doesn't matter. I can't have rumors, not again. Again? I repeated. She exhaled, shoulders dropping slightly. Years ago. There was someone. Another teacher, before you ever came here. It wasn't serious, not really, but people talked. They always do. That admission changed everything. Suddenly, all her restraint made sense, every silence, every hesitation. It wasn't just fear of what could happen, it was memory, the way gossip stains even when it fades. I stepped closer. You don't have to go through that again. Not because of me. Her jaw tightened. But I already am. We stood close enough that I could feel the warmth of her breath. I didn't touch her, I couldn't, but my hand hovered near her arm, unsure if comfort would make it worse. She took a step forward anyway, closing the last of the space between us. You make me forget what I'm supposed to protect, she whispered. The words hit like a confession and a warning all at once. Her hand trembled slightly as she brushed past me to set her phone on the table. It buzzed, a message flashing briefly across the screen. I caught only a glimpse. Cynthia, we need to talk. Elena froze, reading it too. Her lips parted, but no sound came. She knows, I said quietly. She turned to me, her expression shifting, not fear this time, but something deeper, almost defiant. Then maybe it's time we stop pretending. For a long moment, neither of us moved. The air was heavy, the clock ticking somewhere behind us. Then she reached for my hand, just once, deliberate, unguarded. "Whatever happens next," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "we don't go back." And for the first time, she didn't pull away. That night, the studio felt different, like the air itself was holding its breath. Elena hadn't planned to stay. I could tell from the way she moved, restless, distracted, her bag still hanging from her shoulder as she checked her phone again and again. But she didn't leave. Neither did I. "Cynthia texted again," she said finally, setting the phone down. "She wants to meet tomorrow." "I can't." She stopped herself, pressing a hand to her forehead. "I can't keep explaining myself to people." Her voice wasn't angry, just tired. "I know," I said softly. "No, you don't," she whispered, turning toward me. "You're young. You can walk away from this and no one will care. But me," she trailed off, her breath unsteady. "I lose everything if this goes wrong." I took a slow step forward, then another. "And if it's right?" She looked at me then, really looked, and I could see the war behind her eyes. She wanted to be rational. She always did. But reason has a way of dissolving under the weight of want. "I shouldn't be here," she murmured. "But you are." She exhaled sharply, almost a laugh, almost a sob. "You don't make this easy. Neither do you." The words came out quieter than I meant them to, but they landed between us like something final. When she finally set her bag down, it felt like a surrender. The sound of it touching the floor echoed in the empty room. Her steps toward me were slow, careful, deliberate. Every movement carried years of restraint breaking, one breath at a time. "I've spent half my life doing what's expected," she said. "And for what? To keep everyone comfortable?" Her voice was shaking now. I reached out, brushing my fingers against her sleeve. "Then stop pretending for them." That broke her. Not visibly, no tears, no dramatic gesture, just the smallest inhale, like she'd been holding her breath for years and finally let it go. She closed the distance between us. My hand rose to her cheek, and this time she didn't flinch. Her skin was warm, soft beneath my palm. "Tell me this isn't a mistake," she whispered. I shook my head. "Even if it is, I don't care." Her eyes fluttered shut. I could feel the tremor in her hands as they found their way to my chest. For a heartbeat, neither of us moved, suspended between fear and inevitability. The room was silent except for the sound of rain starting again outside. Then she leaned in, just enough for her forehead to rest against mine. Her voice came out barely audible. "I'm so tired of being afraid." "So stop," I whispered back. We didn't need to say anything more. Everything that had been circling between us, the guilt, the restraint, the wanting, finally settled into something clear. When her hand slid down to mine and she didn't pull away, I knew we'd both made the same choice. Whatever happened next, we couldn't pretend anymore. Morning came slow, soft, almost unreal. The rain from the night before had washed the streets clean, and sunlight crept gently through the tall studio windows. The space felt different, not heavier, not lighter, just honest. There was nothing left to hide behind now. Elena was already there when I arrived, seated at the drafting table, her hands wrapped around a cup of coffee gone cold. She didn't look up at first. I thought maybe she regretted everything, maybe we both should have. But when she finally turned toward me, there was no fear in her eyes. Just calm. "I didn't meet Cynthia," she said quietly. "I thought I would, but I couldn't." "Why not?" "Because I'm done apologizing for things that make me feel alive." Her words hung in the air, fragile but steady. I crossed the room, slow, cautious, unsure if the space between us still carried the same electricity, or something softer now. She smiled faintly. "You're early," she said, as if that explained everything. "I couldn't sleep." Neither could I. We stood there for a while, no longer avoiding each other, just breathing in the same quiet. The storm between us had settled into something else, something real. She reached for a folder on the table, and our hands brushed again, familiar now, but no less charged. This time, she didn't pull away. Instead, her fingers lingered, curling lightly around mine. "People will talk," I said. "They always do," she replied. "Let them." Her voice was calm, but I could feel her pulse through her touch. Beneath the composure, she was still trembling, not with fear, but with the weight of finally letting go. I stepped closer, and she met me halfway. There was no grand moment, No music swelling in the background, just her hand sliding up my arm, her head leaning gently against my shoulder. For the first time, it didn't feel like we were breaking rules. It felt like we were choosing something together. We didn't kiss. We didn't need to. The silence between us said more than words ever could. After a long moment, she spoke again, voice barely above a whisper. You know, when this started, I told myself it was nothing. Just a distraction. And now? She smiled, small, quiet, certain. Now I think it's the first thing that's made sense in a long time. I didn't answer. I just tightened my hand around hers, and she didn't let go. Outside, the world kept moving, traffic, voices, sunlight. Inside, everything finally slowed. Whatever waited for us next, questions, whispers, complications, could come later. For now, there was only this, two people who had stopped pretending. She looked up at me one last time, her gaze soft and unguarded. You'll stay? I already am. And for the first time, that was enough. Did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next?